Yo, 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 what's that word? This is 3012 Inning Podcast, big episode 25. So excited to get back and talk to y'all, especially with a lot of things that's been going on with sports. With the summertime, we're going to be pumping out a bunch more content. We are presented by Hattie's Collection. We about to knock this episode out of the park. So today, we're going to discuss the just past 2023 NFL Draft. I'm going to do that team by team, give a little overview, a quick overview of what I thought about their draft, and also who my two favorite prospects were in their draft class. Without further ado, we're going to start off with the Arizona Cardinals. We're going to do it alphabetical order today. So they drafted Paris Johnson, B.J. Ojolari, Garrett Williams, Michael Wilson, John Gaines, Clayton Tune, Owen Papo, Keitrell Clark, and Dante Stills. So overall, solid draft for the Arizona Cardinals. Paris Johnson obviously making that trade back up after trading down in the first round to get, by a lot of people, the number one ranked offensive tackle in the class. My two favorite prospects for their class, and when I talk about these prospects, these are guys who I think can start or at least be major contributors off the bench in the rotation. So I like that Owen Papo, former five-star linebacker back in high school, played at Auburn. I love the way this guy sifted through traffic. Had, I believe, if not the first, definitely the second fastest 40 time at the combine. That definitely shows up on his film. I think there's still a lot of untapped potential there. Even though the Auburn staff was kind of all over the place for his time period there. But he's somebody that I could see getting snaps. Of course, he's competing with snaps with high round investments, first and second round investments in Isaiah Simmons and Xavier Collins. But I think he's a good player that's going to come in and play his rookie year, maybe get in on some third downs. My second favorite prospect was Keitrell Clark from Louisville. Really like this tape. As a cornerback, I think he plays the run better than he plays the pass right now. Still has a lot of athleticism, but I think he helped out on the outside, especially with them losing, I believe, Byron Murphy to the Minnesota Vikings. Oddly enough, he reminds me a lot of Byron Murphy. Next, we had the Atlanta Falcons. So they had Bijan Robinson, Matthew Bergeron, Zach Harrison, Clark Phillips III, DeMarco Hellams, and Javon Gwynn. I really like Javon Gwynn. Even though they just signed Chris Lordstrom to a long-term deal, this guy, he can be a capable 6 offensive lineman or swing player to come in case one of those linemen gets hurt for Atlanta. Of course, they're going to have to do a good job blocking for their first round investment in Bijan Robinson. You know, I am of the opinion with me working towards being a general manager that I probably wouldn't spend a first round pick on a running back, but at the same time, he's a great talent. I think people go overboard when they say he's the top running back over the past 10 years as far as prospect wise. I think they're forgetting about Saquon Barkley, but I digress. The second player in the class I really liked was Zach Harrison. Watching this film, this guy has extremely long arms, has decent get off. It isn't anything majorly explosive, but it's his length, and he seems to have a pass rush plan as soon as he takes off. So I really like that about him. A lot of untapped potential out of Ohio State. Another player I liked in their class was Clark Phillips. Battled really well in the Pac-12. I think he's going to do well in the slot here. Atlanta's revamping their secondary. They picked up Jeff Okadu for a 5th-round pick, former 3rd overall pick this offseason. And, of course, they have the young, talented A.J. Terrell. So, next we have the Baltimore Ravens. They've had Zay Flowers, Trent Simpson, Tavius Robinson, Caillou Blue Kelly, Malasala Mouye, and Andrew Voorhees. Really loved the Baltimore Ravens draft class. The first player I really liked was Trent Simpson. To me, he was the number one linebacker in his class. He simply does everything well. He played in the secondary, actually, as a slot linebacker for Clemson. So he's good in coverage, sideline to sideline speed. Like I said, if he him and Owen Papa were competing for being the fastest linebacker in his class. Great athleticism, great blitzer off the edge. He did everything well. I'd like to see more in this film him what happens when he engaged with blockers, especially when they come off things like counters and things of that nature. But great athleticism. I really want to see what they do with Patrick Queen. And, of course, they just traded for Roquan Smith at the trade deadline last year. So we're going to see how that goes. Maybe this is some admission of a mistake with Patrick Queen. We're coming up. I know I'm not sure the decision they made on his fifth-year options. Baltimore Raven fans, get in the comment and let me know what decisions they made on Patrick Queen's contract. Next prospect I like was Caillou Blue Kelly, cornerback from Stanford. Physicality. This corner is super physical. In this highlight tape, you see his hands on the receiver or the ball at all times. Hopefully he doesn't get called for that in the NFL. I like physical football players. You know, I'm young, but I do like old school play. And now we know that the offense is slanted towards the offense in general. So I like to see that. He's going to have a tough time in practice going up against Odell and their first round pick, Zay Flowers. Florida State fan, so I got to watch Zay Flowers a lot, basically his whole career at BC. This guy really knows how to get open. Extremely quick. I wouldn't say he's a burner, but he knows how to get open with his acceleration. Great route runner. You have to double him. I really like that pick in the first round there, and I want to see how he progresses. I think there might be a little conflict because, honestly, I think him and Odell probably would be – you get the most out of them, but it's at the same position in that slot, and we're going to see how that go. Obviously, they still have Rashad Bateman. So I know Lamar is happy also with the pickup of guard Andrew Voorhees. I liked him at tackle in guard. Obviously at the combine he tore his ACL, showed a lot of heart by coming back and competing on the bench press. And I think, of course, it's going to be a redshirt year for him, but we're going to see how it plays out. I think he could end up being a starter down the line for him. Next we have the Buffalo Bills. They had Dalton Kincaid, Osiris Torrance, Darian Williams, Justin Shorter, and Nick Brosker. I think this was an average draft for the Bills. Dalton Kincaid, best receiving tight end in this draft. Really liked his hands. He knows how to get open, knows how to sit down in that zone really well. More of a big receiver in my opinion, but obviously that's extremely valuable in the NFL that's slanted more towards passing. In the quick passing game, he knows how to get open. Linebackers can't cover him. And it's going to be hard for safeties and corners to cover him, too, with his speed and his knowledge of the route tree. Next, we have Osiris Torrance, guard from Florida. Really liked him. Think he's especially dominant in the run game. He plays the run and the pass really well as far as knowing both skill sets. No problem with him. I think he's going to slide in and immediately start for the Buffalo Bills. Carolina Panthers. They had Bryce Young, Jonathan Mingo, DJ Johnson, Chandler Zavala, and my boy, Jamie Robinson. So, of course, the prospects I liked in their class were their first and their last picks, which was Bryce Young, quarterback, Alabama. I knew, well, in my opinion, Bryce was the best quarterback in his class. The only thing that was holding him back was his physical stature. Didn't know he was going to measure up at 5'10". Even then, I was like, I don't know. C.J. Stroud is still good. But at the same time, Bryce Young is just, he makes something happen. I watched him a lot at Alabama. He knows how to use his eyes to allow his receivers to get open, navigate them to the right area. And even if someone isn't open, he knows exactly where to put the football in the right pockets in order for receivers to make the catch. Great at tight window throws with anticipation. The entire package at quarterback. And we're gonna see how this plays out. But I do like the pickup of Bryce Young along with Miles Sanders in free agency. I believe they're going to rely on the ground game because they do have a young offensive lineman too. You want to get them in there and have them do what they know how to do because I'm not sure they picked up the right pieces in the receiving corps when they let go of DJ Moore in the trade to get the number 1 overall pick. He doesn't really have that standout number 1 receiver to throw to, but Bryce Young, again, he makes things happen, so we're going to see how he develops. Jamie Robinson, Florida State. I really like this pickup, even though Carolina has a solid group of safeties. He's going to play hard on special teams, but Jamie was so versatile for Florida State, playing slot corner, linebacker, sometimes safety is his main position, but he did all those well. Didn't have the greatest 4-day time. I believe it was in the 4.6s, but he's fast on the film. Always knew where to be. He was the quarterback of our defense. Put all our other players in the position to make the right plays. You see him communicate a lot on film mid-play about what's going on, what the offense is doing. We're going to miss him a lot this year at Florida State. Go Noles. But, of course, we're going to be rooting hard for Jamie Robinson in the league. So, shout out to you. Next, we have the Chicago Bears. The picks I really liked, well, first of all, they had Darnell Wright, Garvon Dexter, Tyreek Stevenson, Zach Pickens, Roshan Johnson, Tyler Scott, Noah Sewell, Terrell Smith, Travis Bell, and Kendall Williamson. The picks I really liked from them was Darnell Wright. To me, he's going to be especially dominant in the run game. I loved watching this tape against Will Anderson when Tennessee and Alabama matched up. And then also it was Roshan Johnson. I know that the Texans started Bijan Robinson, and he has so much talent again. But Roshan, watching his film, the only thing I can say was he runs very up high. Like he runs very squared up. He doesn't get down and lean forward like you'd want him to. But honestly, I think he might end up being the star. I think he's coming for that number 1 spot from Deontay Foreman, who had his best year last year at 27. But I think this guy is the future right here. And hopefully, it at least secures that number 2 back spot because I think he has the talent. Like the Noah Sewell pick, former 5-star linebacker from Oregon. He's going to do great against the run. I want to see what he does in the NFL when he's facing the pass, but he was great against the run in college. Overall, I think that with the amount of picks the Chicago Bears had, they set themselves up, even securing some picks for next year. And they got a nice rebuild in front of them. Next, you have the Cincinnati Bengals. So they picked up Miles Murphy, DJ Turner, Jordan Battle, Charlie Jones, Chase Brown, Andre Osivius, Brad Robbins, and DJ Ivy. So he wasn't one of the 2 that I picked from Cincinnati, but I really like Miles Murphy, great against the run. He isn't bad against the pass, but he's not explosive against the pass. He's a great edge-setting defensive end, though. Again, great against the run. I think he's going to help out Cincinnati a lot there. They already have a young tandem at the edge position, and I think he's going to be good on those first 2 downs. The 2 players I picked, though, the first was Charlie Jones, wide receiver from Purdue, really knows how to get open. Can't really cover him one-on-one. He runs his routes really well. Not overly explosive, but again, runs routes extremely well. And the second one was DJ Turner, physical cornerback from Michigan. Really like this tape. Again, he plays the run really well, as you know most Michigan defenders do. Really got in there and stuck his nose in the football. Wasn't scared to take on those blocks against against wide receivers and running backs when he had to blitz off the edge. Really like what I saw from DJ Turner. Think he has the chance to come in and play some major snaps. Next, we have the Browns. Their draft was Cedric Tillman, Saikia Ika, DeJuan Jones, Isaiah McGuire, Dorian Thompson Robinson, Cameron Mitchell, and Luke Whippler. The 2 players I like the Cedric Tillman, first of all. Think he has a chance to play some snaps. We have to see what they do with Anthony Schwartz. The 2 players I picked from the Browns were DeJuan Jones, right tackle from Ohio State. I believe he's 6'8", around 375-ish, so quite possibly the biggest player in the NFL. As soon as he steps in day 1, you always like to hear that. I was more impressed with him in the pass game, surprisingly, in the run game. I know people hear that size, you might think, oh, he might even be a good right guard. Might be, but I like him more in the passing game. And Isaiah McGuire from Missouri. This guy is really tall, has a lot of length coming off that edge. Watching him on film, a lot of his Missouri teammates stand out. I want to see what they do over the next coming years over the draft. But speaking on him specifically, he plays the run and the pass really well. Seems to diagnose plays really fast and get to where he needs to be. Next, we have the Cowboys. They picked up Mozzie Smith, Luke Schoonmaker, Demarion Overshawn, Villalima Fihoka, Azim Richards, Evan Hall, Eric Scott Jr., Deuce Vaughn, and Jalen Brooks. So we know that the Dallas Cowboys, one thing they added to their roster was interesting names. It's going to be hard for people to pronounce some of these names, but I digress. So the Cowboys picks that I really liked were Eric Scott Jr., cornerback from Southern Mississippi. Really like this film, Ball Hawk, him and Trayvon Diggs. That's going to be dangerous every time the quarterback lets the ball go. He didn't have a great 40 time. I believe he ran in the 4.7s. But on his film, he's a playmaker. He knows how to go up and get the ball. When the ball's in the air, he acts as a receiver. I really like seeing that. And then the second player I really liked that the Cowboys picked up was Villalami Fihoku, edge from Fresno State. Wasn't explosive rushing the passer, but I think he's going to do well handling the run. And he's going to do well at stunts. He's a more of an effort player. I think he can spell a lot of those reps you might have for Dexter Lawrence coming off the edge on those first two downs with Villalami. Next, we have the Broncos, Denver Broncos. So they picked up Marvin Mims, Drew Sanders, Riley Moss, J.L. Skinner. So the Broncos obviously traded first-round pick last year for Russell Wilson and a second-rounder this year for head coach Sean Payton. Massive upgrade, by the way. Again, anyways, they traded back into the second round, picked up Marvin Mims, really liked him, got a good viewpoint on him in a bowl game against Florida State, was making excellent plays, good route runner, good speed. I think his best days are ahead of him in the NFL, and we're going to have to see how that plays out. Really like the pickup of Drew Sanders. He was in the mix for that top 3 linebacker, in my opinion, coming into the draft. Picked up 11 sacks just last year. Obviously transferred from Alabama. Really liked him. Athletic player. Great size. Next, you had Riley Moss, which is my second best, in my opinion, the second best player that the Broncos picked up. Riley Moss, kid is a playmaker. In my opinion, he was the best player on that dominant Iowa defense that also had players like Jack Campbell, who we're going to talk about later, Lucas Van Ness, who we'll talk about later, and a couple other picks in there. Obviously, you know, Iowa knows what it's doing on that defensive side. But Riley Moss, very interesting player, knows how to go get the ball, and a really young prospect. His best days are arguably ahead of him as well, and we're going to see how that plays out. We had the Detroit Lions next. Bit of Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell, Sam Laporta, Brian Branch, Hendon Hooker, Brodrick, hey, shout out my name, mate, Brodrick Martin, Colby Sorsdale, and Antoine Green. The picks I really liked were Brian Branch. To me, he was the best cornerback in this draft. Even if he was going in the second round, he slipped a bit. Always knew where to go. Played really well in the slot. Actually played dominant in the slot at Alabama. Nice size, safety cornerback hybrid. Again, I think this is a really solid pickup. Detroit could have been, I know they're in the bottom 3 of pass defense last year, and they shaped their draft a lot around, or not the draft, their free agency, picking up Emmanuel Mosley and one other cornerback. I think C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who I loved for Detroit to pick up. And I think they made big moves back there. And Brian Branch is just going to add to that. Nice tight end after trading away T.J. Hockenson. They picked up Sam Laporta for Iowa. Watch this film. Reminds me a lot of Iowa tight ends, who we know are fantastic tight ends. Remind me a lot of Noah Fant. Knows how to get open. Knows how to help his quarterback out. Solid blocker, but more spaced out wide tight end. But he has the body size to improve his blocking. and it's not terrible in the first place. Next, you had the Green Bay Packers. They picked up Lucas Van Ness, Luke Musgrave, Jaden Reed, Tucker Kraft, Kobe Wooden, Sean Clifford, Dontavian Wicks, Carl Brooks, Anders Carlson, Carrington Valentine, Lou Nichols III, Anthony Johnson Jr., and Grant Dubois. The players I like were Dontavian Wicks, wide receiver from Virginia. To me, he's a possession receiver on the next level. Doesn't have that blazing speed to just blow by cornerbacks, even at the college level, much less at the NFL level. But I still think he has a place in the league, and I expect him to pick up a lot of first downs for Jordan Love. Lucas Van Ness. To me, I was kind of torn on going with another prospect here, like Lou Nichols III. But at the same time, I watched the film, and Lucas Van Ness, he held up well against the run. Had to see him against the pass. Looked really raw on film. Didn't really know how to use his hands. And there's something about, in my opinion, players that don't start in college going so high in the NFL draft. But at the same time, we know Iowa likes to play senior players in general. And he has all the talent, and, he's very athletic. But we'll see how it plays out in a good Green Bay Packers defensive rotation. And we'll watch him and monitor him this year. Houston Texans. So they picked up C.J. Stroud, Will Anderson. Forgive me, I don't know if it's Juicy or Juice Scruggs, Tank Dell, Dalen Horton, Henry To'oTo'o, Jared Patterson, Xavier Hutchinson, Brandon Hill. Really like what the Houston Texans did this year, especially that big trade up back for Will Anderson, who was one of the players who I really loved in this draft. To me, Will Anderson was the clear best player in this draft. Dominant as a pass rusher in his freshman year, dominant as a run defender in his sophomore year, as teams tended to run to the other side or pass to the other side or just play in general to the other side. But, they didn't have much success over there either with Dallas Turner, who's going to be in the 24 NFL draft. And Henry To'oTo'o was another player on that Alabama defense who was making it hard with his communication. Doesn't have great athleticism, but he's in the film. He's going to be a leader for this defense. And, definitely has a future on special teams if he works hard. Jared Patterson was another player I liked, center from Notre Dame. Arguably in that top 3 for centers in this draft. Xavier Hutchinson, another receiver. But the second player was Brandon Hill, a playmaking safety from Pittsburgh. Really liked his range. Came up the battle against the run, and we always appreciate that. Moving on, we had the Colts. So, of course, they made, probably the riskiest pick in the draft, Anthony Richardson, Julius Brents, Josh Downs, Blake Freeland, Adetomowa Adibawar. Forgive me if I said that wrong. Darius Rush, Daniel Scott, Will Mallory, Azim Richards, Titus Leo, Jalen Jones, Jack Witt. So he wasn't one of my 2 players, but we got to talk about Anthony Richardson, obviously quarterback from Florida. Started 12 games at the college level. Obviously, I got plenty of close-up looks at him being a Jacksonville native. Anthony, AR, the thing about him is he wasn't very accurate, but as we all know, he has a cannon for a right arm, incredible athleticism, has a lot of tools. And, that Josh Allen comparison is there with him having low completion percentage in college. Didn't seem to take the easy stuff in the game, miss a lot of nuance and fundamentals, and once that developed, he could be one of the most special quarterbacks in the NFL, but it's going to take a special coach, and I think they pick up one in Frank Wright, who helped out Jalen Hurts, and he knows how to develop the quarterback position, was an OC, a former quarterback's coach, so I think he landed in a good place. AR, as far as where to learn, I think the Colts did release Nick Foles today. They do have Gardner Minshew, so that's a great mentor to have, and doesn't push Anthony to start immediately, but I think he has the talent to push that, and they picked him at 4th overall for him to play. We're going to see how that goes. Another player reminds me of is Trey Lance, and we're going to see what his future holds later on in the offseason. But the 2 players I really liked from their draft was Darius Rush, cornerback from South Carolina, a stout South Carolina cornerback tandem. he was more of the playmaker of that tandem. And at the Senior Bowl, I really like what he did. Had a strong showing, and he had a strong showing at the Combine as well as a 6-foot+ corner. And I also like the Julius Brents. The Colts traded away Stephon Gilmore, lead to the Cowboys. So they traded away Stephon Gilmore. Julius Brents was there from Kansas State. Strong cornerback. He's going to press you and jam you at the line of scrimmage. Also good against the run, long corner. I think he has a long future ahead of him in the NFL. He just seems to know how to play the game really well. Also like Josh Downs, receiver from North Carolina. Shifty slot receiver, very fast. Sam Howell loved him who was there, and that translated over to Drake May. Next, we're going to talk about the Jaguars. Yes, sir. They picked up Antoine Harrison, Brenton Strange, Tank Bigsby, Ventrell Miller, Tyler Lacey, Yazir Abdullah, Antonio Johnson, Parker Washington, Christian Braswell, Eric Hackett II, Cooper Hodges, Raymond Vohasek, and Derek Parrish. Wow, they picked up a lot of players, man. Them Jacksonville veterans, man, just know y'all on the clock. You know they want to get those rookies in there and see what they got to do in this camp, and I hope they ball out. You know, Jacksonville, they had a good season last year when we made the playoffs, and we're going to see what we can do. So players I liked a lot were the linebackers they picked up in the edge. Actually, I love this draft all the way around. So the linebacker I picked first was Ventrell Miller from Florida. Got to see a lot of him. Florida suffered whenever this guy was out. He was there for a while, but he's very physical against the run. Can get manhandled. Maybe not manhandled, but can face some adversity sometimes when he's engaged in blockers. But in space, he's a great linebacker, knows how to get to ball carriers, doesn't get fooled by juke moves and spin moves and things to try to shake him. He's very solid and sound, breaks down really well. Another player I like was Yazir Abdullah from Louisville. Veteran edge from Louisville, was there for a while as well, but he knows how to rush the passer. He knows how to get to the quarterback, and that's always valuable, especially with Javon Chazon, I believe the former edge from LSU, but veteran Jacksonville defensive end. He has a contract coming up, and we're going to see what Yazir Abdullah does to maybe make the Jags make a decision on that upcoming contract. Antonio Johnson, another long cornerback from Texas A&M that I really like. Parker Washington, wide receiver from Penn State, knows how to get open. Shifty slot receiver, Tank Bigsby. Interesting running back. I think he's going to be depth this year, maybe even slide into that running back 2 role as they invested heavily in a running back 2 years ago from Clemson. We're going to see how that plays out. The defending Super Bowl champions, Kansas City Chiefs, they picked up Felix Anudike Azama, DN from Kansas State, Rashay Rice, Wanya Morris, Chamari Connor, BJ Thompson, Keandre Coburn, and Nick Jones. So what I really liked what the Chiefs did was Chamari Connor, cornerback from Virginia Tech, very physically stout cornerback. Again, he's going to be great against the run. Maybe he can play some safety. And Wanya Morris, I think he has potential to be a star right tackle in the league. We know the Chiefs let their left tackle go. They signed Jawan Taylor, former right tackle for the Jaguars. They're going to move him to left tackle. And maybe Wanya Morris has a chance to come in and start, as they also let their right tackle go as well. Next, we have the Raiders. The Raiders picked up Tyree Wilson, Michael Mayer, Byron Young, Trey Tucker, Jacorian Bennett, Aiden O'Connell, Christopher Smith, Amari Burney, and Nesta Jade Severa. Don't like that guy, former Miami player, but it is what it is, man. You're in the NFL, let bygones be bygones. Strong draft for the Raiders, in my opinion. Michael Mayer, in my opinion, he was the best tight end in the draft. Blocks really well. We know Notre Dame is going to coach up some tight ends, but catches the pass really well. I saw some comparisons to Gronk right before the draft. Don't think he has that level of talent or that ceiling, but I think he's right there. Another great tight end he reminds me of, actually more, would be Antonio Gates. But along with the athleticism out wide, again, he has a very large body, a very large frame. Probably could tend to lose a little bit of weight. Certainly wasn't slow, but to more chisel himself up and prepare for the conditioning and stamina is going to take at the NFL level. I think they're going to rely on him a lot, especially after trading away Darren Waller, which was a little bit messed up after the man just got married, and we know his wife, Chelsea Plum, I believe, great guard for the Las Vegas Aces. You know, that was a little bit messed up, trading my man on his honeymoon, but it is what it is. I digress. It's a business. My two players I really like for the Las Vegas Raiders, again, was Michael Mayer first, and then Christopher Smith, safety from Georgia. Really like this guy watching this film. You know, of course, at Georgia, he only had to rely on his assignments, but he did it well. Watching that Georgia defense, me as a guy that love watching film, you can see so many NFL draft picks on that defense. They just reload and reload constantly. To me, he was the second best safety on the team. The first was Malachi Starks, true freshman, but he was still impressive in his own rights. Was sure tackler, great athleticism, know what he was doing, and was a kind of a quarterback for that defense as well, as far as getting everybody right. The linebackers were good, but he played his role and he played it well, and I think he's going to do very well on the Las Vegas Raiders defense. He might even have a chance to push for a starting position as a rookie. Next, we have Los Angeles Chargers. They had Quinn Johnson, Tuli Tupuluto, Diane Henley, Darius Davis, Jordan McFadden, Scott Matlock, and Max Dugans, quarterback for TCU. The two players I picked for the Chargers were the guy I extremely struggled to say his name, which was Tuli Tuipulotu, edge from USC. Extremely long player. He still looks raw on film, like he was just relying on his athleticism. He's going to have to greatly improve his hand placement. And he has guys to learn from there in Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. I think that's going to really help. Obviously, he's not going to start over either one of those guys, but I think he's the future of that position. And it's going to get a lot of pass rushing reps, and we're going to see how that goes. And we had Quinn Johnson was my second player. Quinn Johnson didn't have a very good showing against Georgia. You know, they played a lot of double coverage over him, but he's 6'4", fast guy, knows how to get open, knows how to run routes. He's not going to play over Keenan Allen and I believe Michael Williams, former wide receiver from Clemson. But those guys have faced some injuries, unfortunately, over the past couple of years. So he might be the future at that position. I think he plays one of those positions. I don't think we see him in a slot. But they're going to make a concerted effort to get him on the field, especially with those guys seemingly having some injuries issues. Next, we had the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams picked up Steve Avala, Byron Young, Kobe Turner, Stetson Bennett, Nick Hampton, Warren McClendon, Davis Allen, Puka Nuka, hope I said that right, Trevius Hodges Tomlinson, O'Shane Mathis, Zach Evans, Ethan Evans, Jason Taylor II, Alex Austin, and Dejon Johnson. So I like that all of their prospects, all of them have some level of talent, and I think the Rams did a good job of, them trading picks and, cashing out and winning that Super Bowl. They had to come back and restock the roster, and they picked up a lot of developmental talent, and I like that. You got to set up for what comes next. And the two players that I picked were Warren McClendon, offensive tackle from Georgia. I thought I was going to be more impressed with his running blocking ability before I turned on the tape. But I actually wasn't that impressed with it. But I was overly impressed with his pass blocking. Knows how to move his feet. Offensive linemen get the term a lot of the time, dancing bear. He was a dancing bear for Georgia, moving around. I really liked his footwork again. And the first player was Kobe Turner. Really liked Kobe Turner. Obviously, he's going to learn from one of the GOATs at that position. And they have a similar body build and structure, obviously not as athletic. And, of course, I'm referring to Aaron Donald, a dominant defensive player in the NFL. Kobe Turner, he's going to be a student of the game, learn a lot from Aaron. And, Aaron has not threatened but contemplated publicly retirement, especially after the Super Bowl run for the past couple of years. And Kobe Turner has a chance to be the future. If I was him, I'd go into camp and just soak up everything I can from Aaron, and hopefully my chance come up in the coming years. The Miami Dolphins traded away a lot of their picks. Obviously, massive upgrades for the likes of Jalen Ramsey, in my opinion, the best cornerback in the NFL, of course, former Florida State graduate. They picked up Cam Smith, Devon Arcane, Elijah Higgins, and Ryan Hayes. So a small draft for the Miami Dolphins, but effective. Two players I really liked were Cam Smith, playmaking cornerback again from South Carolina. Was very sticky in coverage. Teams often avoided throwing his way, but teams had it hard when they were throwing to Darius Rush on the other side. Really liked this play. I believe he was at the Senior Bowl, and he had a good showing as well. But nonetheless, his highlights were very impressive. Devon Arcane, another speedy weapon to add to this Miami Dolphins offense. They're going to have to scheme him ways to get open. He wasn't great running through the tackles, but again, you're going to have to get him out there and kick return. But Miami got the fastest team in the league with, of course, Tyreek Hill. Their other wide receiver, I can't remember his name, but he's wide receiver from Alabama. Great young player. And Raheem Mostert at running back. They got a track team out there. I really like what they did. They also picked up a really fast receiver in free agency that also played the slot. Next, we have the Minnesota Vikings. They picked up Jordan Addison, Mekhi Blackman, Jay Ward, Jacqueline Roy, Jaron Hall, and Dwayne McBride. The players I like that the Minnesota Vikings picked up were Jacqueline Roy, defensive tackle from LSU. Got to watch him first game of the last season as they played Florida State. Not overly explosive. I really like this film from high school, but at LSU, I think the most impressive thing was about him was his hand usage. Really know what he wanted to do when he got his hands on the offensive lineman, had a great swim move, knows how to defeat blockers, and block shedding is incredibly important as the next level as you're going to face quicker, more shiftier offensive linemen. When you have a plan once you get your hands on them, I think that's always a plus. Mekhi Blackman was another cornerback from USC. I liked him at Colorado and USC. He knows when the ball goes up in the air, he wants the ball. I love playmaking cornerbacks, guys that put themselves in position to make play. But he does leave himself a little susceptible to the big play. But, the risk versus reward, you love to have those guys, especially when you have a strong secondary around him with Jalen Ramsey. So we know that he's going to get tested. We know he's going to get tested. And I think he has a chance to play some. Miami arguably has the best cornerback tandem in the NFL with Ramsey and Xavier Howard. And also first-round pick invested in the cornerback a couple years ago from Auburn with the retirement of Byron Jones. We're going to see how that plays out, and we want to see how the team is affected by the loss of secondary assistant coach Patrick Surtain. The New England Patriots, Christian Gonzalez, Keon White, Marty Mappa, Jake Andrews, Chad Ryland, Sidney So, Antonio Mafi, Keyshawn Butte, Bryce Beringer, Demario Douglas, Amar Speed, and Isaiah Bolden from Jackson State, the only HBCU player drafted. What I really like about the Pats, Keon White played for Georgia Tech. I watched him on film, and of course he played Florida State a few times. Kid is incredibly athletic. I remember a play he was guarding Lawrence Tornfilly, running back from Florida State. So a running back against a DN, 270 pounds. Lawrence made the play on the wheel route, but he was right there. Of course he doesn't have that DB technique to get his head around. He might have had an interception. He was right there. So that shows you his level of athleticism. Guy's incredibly athletic, and honestly, I think his best days are ahead of him in the NFL as he learns more technique. Obviously, he's in a great coaching staff. Coach Belichick there, a defensive ace, and he was my first player I liked. The second player I really liked was Keyshawn Butte, dominant receiver from LSU. I think Keyshawn, this is a bad thing, but kind of took his foot off the gas this year in preparation for the NFL draft. Wasn't going to go, planned to stay at LSU. But of course, some things, some trains, some things that's going on with some LSU staffers. You can look that up if you want. And he obviously chose to go to the draft, but again, y'all look for that situation if you like to. I think he's going to be a good receiver for the Patriots. Going to be good out the slot or out wide. Might develop into their number one receiver in the coming years. The New Orleans Saints, they picked up Brian Brzee, Isaiah Foskey, Kendre Miller, Nick Sal Devery, Jake Hayner, Jordan Howden, A.T. Perry, and Alec Forsyth. For the Saints, I really like Brian Brzee. I think he's going to be really, really good against the run. Effort player, physical player, was the former number one player in his high school class. Played good for Clemson, faced some injuries and some adversity, but overall when he was on the field, played really well, was solid, sometimes dominant against the run, along with Myles Murphy on that defensive line. And the other player I like was A.T. Perry. Knows how to go up and get the ball. 6'5" receiver, actually dominant at the catch point. Runs solid routes, good in the middle of the field, and is going to be a really good player for them in the red zone. I think that's how he's going to stick on the roster, and we're going to see what he does for that Saints organization. Obviously, they have Michael Thomas there. That's a good receiver to learn from as far as the intricacies of short to intermediate route running. Next, we have the Giants. They picked up Deonte Banks, athletic cornerback John Mitchell-Smith, Jalen Hyatt, Eric Gray, Trey Hawkins, Jordan Riley, and Javarius Owens. Me personally, I think the Giants had a top 7 NFL draft class. I really like what they did in the first round at cornerback, picking up an athletic corner in Deonte Banks. Jordan Michael Smith was my first player that I really like. For a lot of people, the number one ranked center in this class, not mine, but watching this film, he knows how to locate. He knows how to be in the right place at the same time. You can't say the quarterback of the offense, but the quarterback of that offensive line. He knows where to go. He's going to get you in the right position. He pulls really well, but he locates where he wants to be. You never have to worry about him being outside of the right spot. And next that I really like was Trey Hawkins. I could have went some other places here, but Trey really impressed me when I watched this tape at Old Dominion. Physical 6'3", safety prospect. Was great against the run. I think he's going to line up in that box and do really well with him having a ball hawk. I believe Jordan Love, he didn't sign with the Seahawks. I got to look that up. Matter of fact, Giants fan, put me on that point. Let me know what happened with Jordan Love, safety or former safety for the New York Giants. Shout out New York. And speaking of New York, we got the Jets. I'm the Jets fan. That's my squad. It's always been my squad. I don't care playoffs 12 years. But it is what it is. They picked up Will McDonald IV. Why? Anyways, Joe Tippmann, Carter Warren, Israel Abanaconda, Zaire Barnes, Jarek Bernard Converse, and Zach Kuntz. I think overall the Jets had a solid draft class. Obviously, we allowed the Steelers to jump us by way of trade with the Patriots at the end there. But I did like what we did in this draft. Will McDonald, an older prospect, but very athletic prospect, has a lot of bend. But I question when you have players like Carl Lawson, you just invested a first-round pick in Jermaine Johnson. And a lot was going on, but he's a decent prospect. But I think there were guys that were better there that we could have drafted. But I ain't going to get on him too much because I do like him as a prospect. And I think he's going to pick up a lot of valuable reps, especially on third down within his first 2 to 3 years in the NFL. But the two players I did like were Joe Tippmann, my number one player at center position from Wisconsin. Around 6'6", so not your typical size and frame of the center, but he did well to anchor. That's what you wanted to see from him. That was the only question. He did well to, with that frame, to get down low, anchor, get his hands on defensive linemen, and make sure he was not allowing himself to be pushed back into the quarterback. Had a good base, a good crown there for the offensive lineman. Really liked this film. And another player I like was Carter Warren. So I went 2 offensive linemen here for the Jets. We needed that when we picked up Aaron Rodgers, who's an older quarterback, going to turn 40. Carter Warren was really well for Pitt. Again, one of those dancing bears. He really impressed me watching this film. I didn't know he was this talented. He wasn't one of the higher ranked guys, but did really well at pick and mirroring guys. Wasn't great against the run, but against the pass, had, in my opinion, watching all the film of the offensive lineman, the best footwork of the offensive lineman, and his kick slide was very impressive. You can tell he was a veteran player and know what he wanted to do once the snap was off, and very impressed by that. But even if he know what he wanted to do, when those defensive players was throwing those counters at him as they rushed towards him, he always did well to get into their frame and glide them where he wanted to glide them, and you want that in an offensive lineman. Next, we had the Philadelphia Eagles. To me, they had the number 1 draft class. They dominated this draft. They picked up Jalen Carter, to me the second best player in the draft, Nolan Smith, Tyler Steen, Sidney Brown, Khalil Ringo, Tanner McKee, and Moro Ajomo, D-tackle from Texas. I could have went with a host of different players in this class. Very impressive, especially backup quarterback Tanner McKee, who was graded out as a second-round quarterback from a lot of people. But the players I picked were Jalen Carter, again, the second-best player in the draft. To me, guy's unblockable when he wants to be. Obviously, he had some off-the-field troubles coming up here and some questions about his commitment. But, again, there's a reason that the Eagles made a run to the Super Bowl, and I ultimately picked them to win the Super Bowl. Obviously, I was wrong, but Jalen Carter is going to learn a lot from Fletcher Cox. He joins a couple of his Eagles teammates, of his Georgia teammates on the Eagles, including Nakobe Dean, who was excellent for Georgia in 2021, and Jordan Davis right beside him at defensive tackle. Keely Rigo came with him, and Nolan Smith also came with him. So Georgia doing well, Eagles doing well to pick up Georgia national champions. And the second player was Sidney Brown, safety from Illinois. I think he ended up with 6 picks this year. Obviously a ball hawking player. Illinois had a great secondary this year. 3 players drafted within those first 3 rounds. And to me, it was not a toss-up, but very comparable between him and Devon Witherspoon for who I like more at their respective positions. Sidney Brown, again, ball-hawking player. And they had to play C.J. Gardner-Johnson somehow. And I think this guy has a chance to play. If not play, then start. Steelers. We're coming to the end here at the Steelers. I'm going to speed it up. Joey Porter Jr., obviously, that's a great family connection there. But besides the family thing, I think he was a very, very solid corner. Teams end up throwing at Kalen King, which didn't result in much either. But Joey Porter was long, physical. Got to see if he's going to avoid penalties in the NFL because he was very handsy with receivers and very physical overall. But I like him. I think he's the most physically impressive cornerback as far as arm length in this class. Next, we had Darnell Washington, tight end. Excuse me, that's my cat, y'all. But tight end, you know how I go. But tight end from Georgia. To me, is that 6 offensive linemen going to do really well in the run. Did well blocking for Dawan Edwards and Kenny McIntosh for Georgia. Showed hands. I want to see more of his hands in the NFL. See what he does with that. But obviously, they were very impressive. Some other players they picked up were Brodrick Jones. Shout out my name, mate. Kenua Ben. Nick Herberg and Kobe Trice and Spencer Anderson. So strong draft overall from the Steelers. We know they have a great front office with Khan there, and we're going to see how it plays out. Next, we have San Francisco with Jair Brown, Jake Moody, Cam Latu, Daryl Lerter Jr. Y'all see how I put a little bit of a Spanish twang on that Cam Latu. Shout out Cinco de Mayo. But anyways, Robert Beal Jr., D. Winters, Braden Willis, Ronnie Bell, Jalen Graham. We know John Lynch is doing a great job as general manager there. The 2 players I really like were D. Winters, linebacker from TCU. On tape, he was rivaling Trent Simpson for me as far as sideline to sideline ability. We didn't get to see him much in the trenches, but in space, he could have been the best linebacker as far as getting there, making the stop, making the tackle, a good playmaker. And we're going to see how that goes, but I like his potential, especially there with Fred Warner. And a couple other linebackers, Greenlaw. So it's going to be hard for him to crack the rotation, but I like his chances. Secondly, I liked Daryl Lutter Jr., cornerback from South Alabama, best player in that defense. Teams didn't target him as much, but I really liked what he did, got his hands on a lot of balls. Very physical, mirrored very well. I think he's an underrated cornerback in this class. Next, we had the Seahawks with Devin Witherspoon. Thought this was a solid player, very physical at the line. It was hard for players, wide receivers, to even get off the line. His jam was very, very physical. He made it hard for, again, any receivers to do anything. Obviously, that Illinois defense was extremely solid, and he was my first best player. They also picked up Jackson Smith-Njigba, Derek Hall, Zach Charbonnet, Anthony Bradford, Cameron Young, Mike Morris, Alu Sengun, Alu Watimi. Hopefully I got that right. Shout you out. Jarek Reed and Kenny McIntosh. I could have went with Zach Charbonnet here. Honestly, I loved him as a running back prospect at UCLA. I think he'll do well in a zone or power scheme. With the Seahawks running more zone, I think he's going to shine. But they do have Walker there, and they do have Kenny McIntosh that they also picked up. So another good zone running back. And obviously the Steelers wanted some depth there for Walker, even though they plan to use him a lot. I think they're going to use Zach Charbonnet. But my second player was actually Jackson Smith-Njigba, was dominant against Utah in the bowl game a few years back, was hurt most of the year at Ohio State, was still very impressive out of the slot. Up there with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave when he was at Ohio State. He was arguably the most talented. Obviously, you know, Ohio State reloads in that wide receiver position with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Mecca Ibuka coming up in the 2024 NFL draft. But Jackson held his own, and he was a great player in his own right. Next, we had the Buccaneers. Two players I really liked from the Buccaneers were Yaya Diaba and Kalijah Kancey, defensive tackle from Pitt. Kalijah, I think he had 14.5 tackles for loss. Florida player. Didn't have the greatest physical stature, but it's going to do well with their dominant defensive tackle they already got for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And he's going to slide into that defense with his name is Mike. I can't remember his last name. LSU linebacker, formerly young linebacker, requested a trade from the Buccaneers. Yaya Diaby was a solid linebacker for Louisville. We're going to see what he does coming up here, but he becomes more important if they potentially lose Devin White. If they potentially lose Devin White via trade. Then we had the Tennessee Titans. The two best players that I like from them were quarterback Will Levis, who I think is going to do well with that play action scheme that they run. They run the ball a lot. That's going to protect him. He played well at Kentucky when he had those elements around him. And to me, he was probably the third-ranked quarterback in this class. He was my first prospect that I really liked, but the rest of the draft were Peter Skoronski, Tajay Spears, Josh Weil, Jalen Duncan, and Colton Dowell. Second best player I liked was Tajay Spears. At first, I really wanted to compare him to Reggie Bush as far as when he was with the Saints. Not college Reggie Bush, was arguably the GOAT college running back. But watching this tape, I was like, this guy just reminds me so much of Alvin Kamara. He runs between the tackles well, catches well, is going to do great. As far as if they can add some zone elements to the run game, obviously they have Derrick Henry, and he carries a heavy workload in the run and pass game. But I think this guy is going to relieve some of that with what he can do with the ball in his hand. Played a lot of Wildcat at Tulane, and I think he's going to be a solid piece in this offense, and a solid piece if, God forbid he goes down, Derrick Henry, or, when he needs a spell, this is going to be a solid guy to come in and help out the team and keep those chains moving. Finally, we're at the Washington Commanders. They picked up Emmanuel Forbes, Dartavius Martin, Ricky Stromberg, Braden Daniels, KJ Henry, Chris Rodriguez Jr., and Andre Jones. I could have went to a few different players here. Really like Chris Rodriguez, KJ Henry. That's taking a flyer on a former 5-star prospect, extremely athletic, coming off the edge. But my two players were their first two picks. Emmanuel Forbes has 6 pick sixes in college, knows how to score touchdowns, knows how to be a playmaker, has a thin frame, gonna have to bulk up. I think he's in the 160s. And obviously, teams are going to want to run the ball at him, see if he can hold up against the run. But Again, it's a pass-happy league, and you gotta need those guys that know how to get their hands on the ball. Really like this pick, as the Washington Commanders were middle of the pack as far as defensive coverage, pass coverage last year. And I like their second-round pick, Jartavius Martin, Quan. Shout out to Lehigh graduate. You know, I'm a Lehigh boy myself. Very physical. You can tell he learned a lot from his teammate Devin Witherspoon as far as jamming at the line, as far as being physical. Stayed attached to the receiver's hips. Didn't really see him get blowed by a lot. Showed good speed. I think he surprised with his speed at the combine. Isn't the biggest guy in the world, but knows how to get up under receivers, knows how to make his presence felt against the run. And regardless, he's going to be stout against the pass. Had a lot of pass breakups, and I think that continues in the NFL. Again, I'm rooting for you regardless. As a Lehigh boy, shout you out. I want to say thank y'all, and I want y'all to check out HaddisCollection.com. We got new apparel dropping, new stuff. Check out my other episodes of 3012 Inning Podcast. Again, we're going to be dropping a lot more content for you guys coming up this summertime as I have more time on my hands. I want to say thank you again, and I appreciate y'all for listening in. If you listen this long, it's been our longest episode. And I wanted to check in with y'all. Y'all get in the comments if y'all disagreed or agreed with anything I said about the 2023 NFL Draft. Yo.